Hello and welcome to the Yumi and IP podcast brought to you by Northon's Media PR and Marketing Limited in the United Kingdom. I'm your host, Carlos Northon. I'm the founder and CEO of Northon's Media and publisher of the Global IP Matrix magazine, the Women's IP World Annual, and the upcoming Caribbean IP Annual. Today, I'm excited to introduce a very good friend and colleague of mine, Michele S. Katz. Michele is the founding partner of Advitam IP, LLC. Michele has over 20 years of expertise in all areas of intellectual property law, including client counseling, strategic analysis, licensing, prosecution, and litigation. Her firm is known for delivering successful outcomes in trademark and copyright registrations, patents, and legal disputes. Michele is passionate about education and giving back. She has established a scholarship fund in her father's name at the Hebrew University of Israel and created an online mentorship program for law students and lawyers, new lawyers. She also educates business owners and youth on IP topics, contributing to various publications and speaking at global conferences. Michele, hello, how are you? And welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's fun to be on this side. Well, I'll let you know when it's over. I believe that to be true. But normally I'm in your seat.
Yes, exactly. But Michele, just to let our listeners know a bit about you, you actually host the Women's IP World podcast. We're on, I think it's coming to the end of season 3 now, is it?
Yep, and we're starting to record season 4.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for doing an amazing job with that, by the way. And we look forward to listen to the podcasts of the new contributors to the publication coming up, Michele.
Thanks so much.
So, Michele, we have you on the podcast today to discuss your latest article in the issue 19 of the Global IP Matrix magazine, which was actually our interspecial. Your article is titled "AI or Nay: Navigating Legal Challenges of Generative AI." So we just wanted to ask you a few questions about this to see whether or not, it will resonate with some of the people listening to our show. And so here we go. How do you see ethical challenges of using generative AI in legal practice evolving, especially with respect to authenticity and professional responsibility?
So anytime you have a new technology that's becoming mainstream, and, for years people have talking about AI and AI issues. Mm-hmm. Now we've got this generative AI. So that's like Chat GPT. Most people probably at this point have heard of it. Even my kids know how to use it, kind of thing. And you've got to then step back as it becomes a tool in your industry to figure out, is this okay? Could I be violating confidentiality that I have, a duty I owe my clients? What are the ethical considerations? And so this is no different. We need to look and determine, what are the limitations? I'm not saying, of course, we shouldn't use it, but we need to figure out what are the guidelines, what's the appropriate use, because certainly there are ethical considerations that we need to evaluate as generative AI becomes a part of our practices.
Okay. But what are the potential risks and benefits of using AI tools like, LexisNexis AI Assistant for legal research and document drafting?
So, always when we can save time, we'll be positive. We'll start with the pros first, and then we'll go to the cons. It's great to have these tools. A lot of industries, I think the legal industry is no different, are having staffing issues, being able to retain associates, for example. Often the associate level, that's the level that's conducting research, and it's difficult sometimes to maintain these people and constantly training. So I get the headache of employers, employees too, but in this case, employers, where you have staffing constraints, and so you want to be able to still get this work done. And tools like the Lexis AI Assistant can help with that. And Lexis, that's geared towards law firms. So it seems like the perfect tool. Also, since we do tend to, charge by hour, at least in the United States, we're known for that. But of course, there's flat rate billing. No matter how you look at it, the less time you spend can be less expensive for the client or it could actually, free up some of your day to work on some other things. So that's on the pro side. All that's very helpful. On the con side, you got to be careful when you're typing these things in. Who else has access to the information you're typing in, which could be proprietary information of your clients? Who else can view that? Can it be hacked? What's the security measures? And also, you got to check the work. Just because Lexis AI or Assistant or whatever other tool that you may be using, you got to make sure that you're checking that what the information that's being generated is actually accurate.
Sure. So, talking client confidentiality, how can attorneys safeguard client confidentiality when using AI platforms, given the risk of data breaches and public disclosure?
I think it's important for your client to know what you're, a lot of times in the legal field, it's about, consent, being, transparent with your client, letting them know what tools you use. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think having that open dialogue with your client just puts you in a better position with the relationship with your client, but also, as far as having that discussion and making sure that they know what risks there are, even if it might shave off some dollars or euros or whatever the case may be on their bill. Okay. The other thing is, what's the reputation? What are the safeguards? Is understanding the tool that you're using. Say it's Lexis AI Assistant, for example. Mm-hmm. They publish what their policies are and their security. And if you don't know, it would be wise to look these things up so you're aware in advance. Plus, that could prepare you for the conversation you're going to have with your client.
Okay, excellent. So moving on to the case study and analysis part, can you elaborate on the sanctions imposed on the New York lawyers who submitted brief fictitious case actions generated by ChatGPT? What does this incident signify for the legal profession?
Right. So, and I had alluded to the fact that it's critical to check what generative information comes out your way. Okay. And that's exactly what some lawyers did not do. And we should learn from their experience in that they filed a brief and the generative AI cited cases that did not exist. They were fictitious. And I mean, I do a lot of litigation in my firm in Advitam IP. I have throughout my entire career. The first thing we do when we receive a brief from the other side is we check their cases. But normally, I mean, in the past, it was always just to see that the case actually supports what they're stating in the brief. Okay. Or that it's, it's good law, that it's still good law that they're relying on. Mm-hmm. But now you actually have to check and see, well, is this even real? I mean, it seems kind of absurd, but you're up to, who knows the circumstances of how and why it was filed without being checked, because it was clearly not checked. And then the judge, who obviously became aware of it, fined the attorney. So that, and we may be, I mean, hopefully this will be, this will be the case. And now people will be like, oh goodness, I definitely need to do that if it wasn't on their checklist already, which would be a little bit shocking, but now it definitely should be.
Sure. So with regards to regulatory standards, what specific regulatory standard and ethical guidelines do you believe should be introduced by organizations like the American Bar Association to govern the use of AI in legal practice?
It's always helpful to have guidelines. Now, of course, then when you breach, whoever the accuser is of this misconduct has something to cite, right? So it's in part for that, but also what for the practitioner to actually have the checklist. Did I do this? Did I do this? Obviously checking cases, as we've discussed, is vital before you file it. And, you're signing your name, you're swearing before the court that everything in that brief is correct. So that would be number one is to check what you're citing.
Sure. With respect to education and training, how important are ongoing CLE programs in educating legal professionals about the ethical implications of AI? What should these programs focus on, Michele?
Certainly, and I would imagine that certain organizations, even in our IP community, would be lobbying for certain procedures to be included, adopted by various organizations around the world. But the confidentiality piece, authenticity, and accuracy verification, I think would be three areas that would be helpful for practitioners. Some people may not realize that generative AI can just make something up. Part of that is education. We're not I'm not the generation that grew up with cell phones and Facebook. I mean, that all happened later, in my, I'm a Xer, and of course, and beyond. But there are going to be people who will definitely run afoul, just not knowing, just kind of, ignorance is not bliss in this case. You really need to understand what the ramifications are and what the requirements are if you're going to be implementing these tools into your practice.
Sure. I mean, it's crazy to talk about the future of AI in law when we've barely, touched the surface, and we're just getting started with this. But in what ways can AI be ethically and effectively integrated into legal practice to enhance efficiency while maintaining integrity of the legal profession, Michele?
So, you had mentioned the guidelines of the ABA, model rules and so forth. And, it doesn't hurt even to put in, into your practice some policies. You may want to put in your retainer agreement that you use AI, generative AI tools. Then, the client signs off. That could be one way of handling it. But I do think it is important as this becomes more mainstream in our practices. I don't think it is right now. I think some are using it, but I don't think it's I still think, like you said, it's newer for law firms to be relying on generative AI. And, some maybe in some industries more than others in our legal fields. But if we recognize it's a thing, it is a thing, it's a growing thing, and implement it into our policies, that we cover ourselves, for one. I mean, I think that's important, but also we, just make sure that everyone is on the same page as we move forward in the space.
Well, that's a fantastic ending with that, Michele. I'd really like to thank you today for coming on the UME and IP podcast and for sharing your knowledge with us, as well as, talking about your latest article in issue 19 of the Global IP Matrix magazine, which you can download and read at www.gipmatrix.com. And it's also available in audio format. Michele, thank you for joining me today. And, let's do it again.
Let's do it. Thanks, Carlos.
Speak to you soon, Michele. Take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.